the evening of the 6th of December 1995, there were several reports of gunshots heard around the Workhouse Lane area of Retton, Essex, and the murders of Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, ranging from 7 p.m. till just after midnight. The midnight shots possibly connected to the version of events Billy Jasper came forward with to the police in January 1996. But the first sign of gunshots might not be connected, because the report from Patricia Fairbold stated that the gunshot she heard was either Wednesday the 6th of December or Monday the 4th of December. She went on to say she was just getting out of the bath when she heard the sound of a single shot. This was definitely the sound of a shotgun, because her husband had been shooting shotguns for at least 30 years and she was used to hearing the sound. She could only remember the sound of one shot, and it came from somewhere at the back of her house. Now, the sound of one shot doesn't really sound like it's actually connected to the murders of the three. But there are some people out there that believe Pat's side shot could have been done at a different time to Tony and Craig, and possibly out of the Range Rover or in another vehicle. Could this single shot heard by Patricia Fairbold been Pat's side shot? The time of the shot was between 7 and 7:30. Now, according to Darren Nichols, all three were dead by 7 p.m. But according to Billy Jasper, it was until after midnight, plus the uncertainty of whether it was Monday the 4th or Wednesday the 6th of December. Now, the second set of statements containing gunshot sounds were from Sarah and David Gibbons. The difference between their statements was that Sarah Gibbons stated that she heard gunshots around 4 p.m. of that evening. What she heard was 3 shots, followed by 2 shots, followed by a further 3. Now, according to her husband David Gibbons, he believes the sounds of the shots came a lot later, around 6 p.m. The following is the statement of Sarah Gibbons from the 10th of the 12th, 95. I work with my husband David Gibbons in a furniture manufacturing business situated at the Barnes, Oldham Farm, Main Road, Retton. There are only 2 of us employed within the business. We do have a helper called John Webber who assists on occasions. The business has been ongoing for 20 years. My husband works every day at the site in Retton, and I join him on a regular basis, but not every day. On Wednesday the 6th of December, about 7:10, I left my home address with my husband to go to work to the site. We left in our red Vauxhall Cavalier Estate motor vehicle, which my husband drives. We took a back route to the site via Holbridge and Hockley in order to miss the busier roads. The back route took us to the Retton Turnpike roundabout, and then we took the A130 main road towards Chelmsford. After passing the traffic lights at the brow of the main road and starting to drive down the hill towards the dual carriageway, our site is situated on the left-hand side of the road, about 150 yards from White House Farm. I arrived at the site about 7:45 a.m. The site is situated about 75 yards from the main road entrance. Once at work, my husband and I spent the majority of the day inside the building working. About midday, we stopped for lunch and again continued working in the afternoon. As the afternoon went on, I switched the television on in the building to order to watch Today's the Day. I put the channel on to BBC 2 and watched it for about 5 minutes, but I cannot recall what was on the telly, as Today's the Day had not started yet, so I wasn't paying much attention. Having switched the television on, after about 5 minutes I decided to make some tea. There were no taps in the building, and in order to get water, I had to go to a freestanding tap outside. I left the building, my husband was still inside working, and I walked to the tap, which is about 25 yards from the building and about 50 yards from the main road. Having got there, I discovered the pipe had frozen, so I returned to the building. As I was walking back to the building, I suddenly heard 3 gunshots being fired. The sound came from behind me, in the area of the main road and the Old Hall Farm. I looked towards this area as I heard the shots, but I could not see anything. I immediately thought about the farmer shooting in the fields, as this is a regular occurrence, although I was surprised as it was quite late and the farmers usually shoot earlier in the day. I continued to walk back towards the building, and as I did, about 1 or 2 seconds after the first 3 shots were fired, which were in quick succession, I heard a further 2 shots. These shots were filled with a gap at about half a second between them. I continued to the building, and on entering I mentioned to my husband the lateness of the shooters being out. And moments later I again heard another 3 shots being fired in quick succession. I didn't think any further about the shootings as I put it down to the farmers. Although I'm not certain of the time, having entered the building, I did watch Today's the Day at BBC 2, which starts at 4 p.m. At the time of the shots being fired, the weather was cold, but not snowing, and it was just starting to get dark. I finished work about 7:30 p.m, and my husband and I returned home, arriving about 8:15. On the 6th of December, I was wearing black trousers, black boots, black overjumper, and a cream-coloured full-length coat. My husband wore a burgundy polo neck, royal blue trousers, a rusty coloured jumper, and green sleeveless jacket. I'm able to say the noise I heard was gunshots, not a car backfiring, as I'm so used to hearing the farmers shooting. The following is the statement of David Gibbons from the 10th of the 12th, 95. I reside at the address given with my family. I own an upholstery business which is situated at Old Hall Farm at A130, Rettendon, Essex. The building is about 50 yards from the main A130 road. It is about the same distance to where the police have sealed the entrance to the small lane recently. On Wednesday the 6th of December 95, I was at work in company with my wife, Sarah. I'd started work about 7 a.m. when my wife joined me later in the day. I'm not sure of the exact time, but it was a late afternoon or early evening when I heard the sound of gunshots. My wife had just gone out to fill some water containers from a nearby tap. The door of my building was closed at the time, and as she opened the door on her return, I heard 3 shots in quick succession. I remarked to my wife, saying, "It's a bit late for shooting." I didn't take any notice of this, and I carried on working. I think the time of the shots may have been around 6 p.m. I say this because I was buttoning settees. I normally take around 2 hours to do each settee. I was on my 3rd one, and having started doing this around midday, I can only put the timers around that period. It's not uncommon to hear gunshots in the area because there is a clay shoot, and also quite a few individuals shoot in the area. I do not recall seeing anyone in the area of the barn, and I can say that apart from my wife and I, there were no other people working there. My wife and I are the only people that use the barns, apart from the landlord of South Woodham Ferris. The time stated by Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons doesn't match up to Darren Nichols' version of events, nor did the single shot heard by Patricia Theobald, which could have been the Monday. The next statement from Michael Strelly Upton states that his gunshots that he heard were possibly heard between 9 and 9:30, but could have been when he left his premises between 7 and 7:45. The following is the statement of Michael Strelly Upton from the 10th of December 95. I own and run the Pages Farm, situated at Rettendon Common, East Hanningfield Road. The farm is situated off the A130 main road. As part of my work, I deal with animals, and around 6 times a week I have cause to leave my farm and go to collect animal food. The place I go to collect the food is North Woodham Bakeries, and I leave about 7:30 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. On Wednesday the 6th of December, I had again to go to North Woodham Bakeries to collect food for the animals. I recall having the evening meal that day around about 7 p.m, and after that I sorted out my vehicle to go and collect the food. I left in my Land Rover and went via a petrol station to fuel the vehicle and on to North Woodham. The journey usually takes 20 minutes, however on this occasion it took longer due to getting fuel and being delayed at the bakeries. However, I recall returning home to the farm about 9 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. The exact time I cannot remember. It was around about this time, whilst I was unloading the Land Rover, that I heard the sound of rapid burst of gunfire coming from the area of Workhouse Lane. I was quite used to hearing gunfire coming from this area on Wednesdays, as this is the day that there are shoots in the fields and surrounding areas. However, I was quite surprised to hear the shots so late at night. I would describe the sound as either 2 or 3 shots being fired very closely together, although I believe I heard the shots being fired around 9 to 9:30 p.m. when I returned home from the bakeries. It may have happened just before I left, around 7:30 to 7:45 p.m. I'm able to remember this incident so well as it was unusual to hear gunshots so late in the day. The shots that occur on the Wednesdays are clay pigeon shooting and runs the entire day until it gets dark. Now what's interesting about the statement from Michael Strelly Upton is at the end of it he states that normally on Wednesdays there's clay pigeon shooting close to Workhouse Lane, and it runs the entire day until it gets dark. Now, according to Bill Philbold, who runs the shooting range, on the Wednesday the 6th, the shooting stopped around 3:45 because it got cold and dark. He does have the lighting facilities to run later in the evenings, but on that evening, his visitor had an interest in discussing the ponds. So it seems very likely that the reason that Workhouse Lane was chosen for these murders was that the sounds of any shots happening within that evening wouldn't be noticed as much in any other area. Plus, if you believe in the Billy Jasper theory, there is the way of getting to Workhouse Lane without going through the main entrance, or for the alternative route from the Wheatsheaf pub following the track, which then also brings you out at Workhouse Lane. The final statement, containing gunshot sounds, was not long after midnight, and that was a statement of Stephen Rogers, and this is possibly connected to the Billy Jasper theory. The following is the statement of Stephen Rogers from the 13th of the 12th, 95. I live at 9 acres Retton Common, Essex. I would describe my home as a detached dwelling with 3/4 of an acre of land containing 4 stables. We are in a valley surrounded by fields situated to the west of the A130 and west of the Wheatsheaf Public House. At this time there were 3 horses and fowl in our stables. The fowl has been weaned off its mother and therefore requires to be fed at all times of night and day. I can say that it is not uncommon to hear gunshots during the day and early evening in this area, although I am not a shooting person. I do not possess a gun. During the evening of Wednesday the 6th of December, I was working in our village hall. I finished the hall at 10:45 hours, returning home by 11 o'clock. I then had a sandwich and 2 cans of beer before going out to the stable to feed the fowl. I would estimate the time to be 11:45 p.m. I had to mix the food to feed the animal and wait for the fowl to finish, which normally takes about half an hour. On this occasion, I'd given the fowl some food and given some attention to the other horses. I would estimate the time to be about midnight or a few minutes later. I was standing outside the stable when I heard a series of gunshots. These shots over here came from a southerly direction. I walked to the fence at the rear of the stables trying to see where the gunshots had come from. I saw nothing. Although it was cold and very late, if I'd have heard just 2 shots, I wouldn't have taken much notice. I would have thought it was someone shooting rabbits. The gunshots I heard were more than 2 in a number. They were more of a rapid fire, a fusillade of shots. There was no pause to reload in between. These shots were in a rapid succession. I couldn't say how many shots there were. I heard 2 shots. I expected the noise to stop, but it just continued. After these shots, I didn't hear anything else. I remained out of the stables for about another 10 more minutes before returning to my home. As I walked inside the light of my hallway, I checked my wristwatch, and the time was 00:30, half past midnight. I didn't think any more about the gunshots until I heard people shooting in the area over the weekend. This prompted me to remember the unusual noise I'd heard on Wednesday night, and I reported the matter to the police. So unfortunately, Stephen Rogers there, unable to say how many shots in total there were, but it was more than 2, and they were in a rapid succession, a fusillade of shots. But he also goes on to say that if he'd have heard just 2 shots, he would have assumed it was someone shooting rabbits. Now, if these shots that he heard at just after midnight and just before 12:30 were not connected to the murders and were not the person that Billy Jasper dropped off at Rectory Lane just after midnight, then who was out that time of night shooting? The weather wasn't exactly perfect for lamping, for instance, or for some sort of hunting. The ground was thick with snow and it was cold. Also, with the murders taking place and being in the media, wouldn't anybody that was out that time of night for any other reason than to murder the 3 come forward, even if they were breaking the law? Wouldn't that be better than later on, when someone came forward with information that you was in the area and possibly putting yourself in the frame for murder? Wouldn't it be easier to have come forward, admit that you was in the area, and that would have at least cleared up who was shooting at this time of night. But in reality, if there was no one out there shooting at midnight and these gunshots cannot be explained, then it really does just give more credibility to Billy Jasper's version of events and him dropping someone off at Rectory Lane. So if the gunshots at 12:30 or just after midnight were the gunshots that killed Pat, Tony and Craig, then what were the other sounds of gunshots from the earlier statements? Patricia Fairbolds could have just been on a different night, but Michael Upton, who heard gunshots at around about 9 to 9:30, also mentions in his statement that he could have been mistaken, and the shots that he heard could have been before he left, between 7:30 and 7:45. Now, if this was the case, and the shots were around 7:30, 7:45, not later than what he thought, around 9 o'clock, could this go with the Kevin Tarbuck statement, who saw the white van leaving the lane at 7:40 on the Wednesday, 6th of December? Could that also go together with Patricia Fairbolds' statement, but only the one shot she heard? Maybe she didn't hear the rest of the shots. That would have been also around about the same time, between 7 and 7:40. The white van seen leaving the lane around about 10 to 8. Could all that be connected, or could it literally just be put down to coincidences? Patricia Fairbolds' shot could have been the Monday. It was only a single shot, and Michael Upton really doesn't know whether it was 7:45 or whether it was later on between 9 and 9:30. Either way, there's no real explanation for the shots that did come later on at 12:30. There are some people that believe that the three were killed in the morning around about 6 o'clock. But there were no sounds of gunshots heard around that time, or no official statements from anybody, but we do know there are around about 124 crates of evidence that's never been released. Could there be further statements within these crates that heard gun sounds, gunshots at different times on that evening, or possibly on the next day, on the 7th of December, around about 6 in the morning? One thing's for certain, if you do believe in the Billy Jasper theory and what's come out recently with the names that he mentioned and the connections to Tony Tucker and the money laundering, then the sounds of the gunshots heard by Stephen Rogers between 12 and 12:30 were likely the sounds of the person that Billy Jasper dropped off at Rectory Lane. But one of the big questions remain is, where were the three between 7 p.m. and midnight? If they were still alive until midnight, is any evidence or any sightings of them seen in those 124 crates that have never been released? And just like many parts of this case, one question then just prompts another one. If they were down that lane until midnight, or had gone back to midnight, what was the real reason for being down that lane? Was it just for some coke deal? Or were they being lured down there for another reason? And why did they not have weapons? These are just some of the unanswered questions that we hope one day might get answered.